먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. It's the final day of the third summit for democracy being held in Seoul at a time when there's a general election coming up in April. Along with world leaders, President Yoon will co-host the session debate on technology, elections, and fake news. South Korea announces the allocation of 2,000 new medical school admission slots despite strong protests from doctors. Over 80% is to be distributed to schools outside the capital. Tonight, the 2024 Major League Baseball is playing its first regular season game in Seoul for the first time. With Shohei Ohtani's debut, the Los Angeles Dodgers are taking on the San Diego Padres. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with day 3 of the third summit for democracy being hosted by South Korea. World leaders are discussing ways to instill freedom and democracy for future generations. The leaders' plenary session convened today via video conference, co-chaired by South Korea, Kenya, and Denmark. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young is at the Yongsan Presidential Office to fill us in. President Yoon is soon set to lead a session. Soo-young, what are we expecting to hear?
Good evening, Chi-young. Yes, President Yoon is going to lead a session on artificial intelligence, elections and fake news. Now, these are issues that he's been very vocal about in recent weeks. Of course, with South Korea holding its presidential elections in less than 21 days. Now, he's been underscoring the need to protect democratic systems and electoral integrity against the threats of fake news and disinformation driven by technology like AI in various formats that we see, such as deepfake videos. Now, this is a compelling issue for democracies everywhere, as more than 60 countries that represents about half of the world's 8 billion people are holding elections this year. Now, especially as there have been quite troubling cases of foreign intervention around the world in elections in recent years, at a time when voter sentiment is all the more susceptible to manipulation through social media, heavily curated by algorithms. This topic is going to be very relatable to most democracies across the world. Now, President Yoon is also expected to discuss ways to bridge the digital gap between countries, as the widening disparity could worsen economic gaps, which would in turn affect the health of democracies. Now, this ties in with the third session on the Global South and ways to foster partnerships in governance, which will be chaired by Kenyan President William Ruto.
I see. So this is the final day of the Summit for Democracy. What outcomes can we expect? And let's go over the significance of this being held in South Korea.
Sure, Chi-young. So, well, I'm expecting to see a joint declaration coming out of the summit like there was last year, and according to my sources, there should be one. And this would, of course, relay the collective determination by the world leaders to really strengthen their solidarity against the misuse of technology, especially technology like AI, which would undermine individual freedoms and political institutions in liberal democracies. Now, the significance of South Korea hosting the summit, that's been a growing area of interest by international observers. It's being held independently outside the US for the first time, and observers have said that South Korea, given its homegrown experience of becoming a liberal democracy that leads in IT and soft power, it should play a leading role in renewing faith in democracy around the world as well as strengthening it. That according to a column this week in Foreign Policy. Now, that very column said that South Korea, being an exemplary non-Western democracy, it should really play this leading pivotal role, especially as democracies everywhere, they try to solidify the democratic institutions and infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific as well as the Global South.
Well, I see, Soo-young. Thank you for your reporting. Now, moving on to the doctors protesting against the government's plan to boost medical school admissions quotas. The government today unveiled how it is allocating the additional 2,000 medical school places. More than 80% is being distributed to schools located outside the capital region. Groups of doctors are reportedly going over possible measures against the government's plan. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
Even with doctors strongly against the medical school quota expansion, the government has pushed through with its plan. On Wednesday, Education Minister Lee Joo-ho announced more details about how the additional 2,000 places will be allocated. This came following an address by Prime Minister Han Duk-soo, who further stressed the need to increase the enrollment quota.
When considering various factors such as changing demographics, changes to society, and development in medicine, we thought it would be fundamentally impossible to provide proper medical care to people without increasing the number of medical personnel. An additional 2,000 doctors is the minimum required to tackle the doctor shortage.
2,000 additional places are mainly being distributed to medical schools outside the capital area, with around 82%, that is 1,639. State-run universities were guaranteed to have 200 places, while smaller medical schools that had fewer than 50 places have been allocated at least 100, to make sure the healthcare infrastructure is strengthened in areas outside the capital region. The remaining 361 seats went to medical schools in Gyeonggi-do Province and Incheon in order to narrow the gap in numbers between Seoul and other areas within the capital region. Based on the announcement, each university will have their new quotas reflected in their admission announcements for the 2025 academic year, which will be released to students in around May. Doctors' groups are strongly resisting the plan. 3 groups, the Korean Medical Association, the Korea Interns and Residents Association, and the Medical Professors Association of Korea, are reportedly going to have a rare online meeting on Wednesday night to go over possible measures against the government's plan. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In light of South Korea's 51st Commerce Day today, President Yoon has pledged to finish the government's labor reform plan and scrap outdated regulations. The aim is to make sure the country matches up with global standards. The pledge came as part of a special lecture in the business district of Yeouido in Seoul. Yoon also noted that big corporations need to join in when it comes to tackling key social issues, such as the low birth rate, saying freedom comes with responsibility and a sense of ethics. He also praised the work of business leaders, saying their predecessors are true heroes of the nation's modern history. Among the attendees were Samsung Chairman Lee Jae-yong, SK's Choi Tae-won, and Hyundai Motors' Jung Hee-sun. Beyond borders, North Korea claims to have successfully conducted a ground test of a solid fuel engine for a longer-range hypersonic missiles. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung tells us what this means.
North Korea has claimed success in a ground test of a solid fuel engine for a new medium to long-range hypersonic missile. The North Korean Central News Agency reported Wednesday that Pyongyang conducted the test at a launching station near the west coast the day before, under the supervision of leader Kim Jong-un. Kim reportedly expressed great satisfaction with what he called the successful completion of the Strategic Weapons Development Plan presented back in 2021. Hypersonic missiles are among the list of weapons Kim vowed to develop within 5 years after the plan was announced. The regime conducted its first ground test of the engine last November. In January this year, the North test-fired a solid-fuel IRBM tipped with a hypersonic warhead. Experts say Tuesday's engine test was carried out as part of efforts to correct flaws discovered then.
The launch in January did not have a sufficient flight range despite it being a medium to long-range missile. They had to verify once again that it can fly up to a range of about 3,500 kilometers. So it appears that they increased the combustion time of the rocket's first stage to increase the flight range.
The North appears to have conducted the engine test on the ground instead of test-firing a missile this time to avoid tensions with Japan.
North Korea is currently showing relative restraint in firing in the direction of Japan's exclusive economic zone. Although we still have to wait and see, we can see that this is ultimately a sign of caution and consideration in preparation for future dialogue with Japan.
Hypersonic missiles are designed to travel at more than 5 times the speed of sound and often maneuver at relatively low altitudes, making them harder to detect and intercept. While North Korea's ICBMs are mainly designed to reach the U.S. mainland, this IRBM can be seen as a weapon system with the main purpose of targeting U.S. military bases in Guam or Japan. Eyes are on whether the North will soon test launch a hypersonic medium to long-range missile equipped with Tuesday's newly tested engine. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The Gaeseong Industrial District Foundation officially shuttered its doors this afternoon. The state-run foundation supported South Korean companies operating in the industrial complex near the North Korean city of Gaeseong. Its board of directors passed a motion to dissolve the foundation and presented a liquidation plan. Support for South Korean companies that operated in the complex will now be provided by the South-North Korea Exchanges and Cooperation Support Association. Founded in 2007, the foundation suspended operation in 2016 in response to Pyongyang's continued nuclear and missile provocations. South Korea's Defense Minister Shin Won-sik today met with his Iraqi counterpart, Tabet Mohammed Sayed al-Abashi, who is currently visiting Korea. The Iraqi minister has reportedly expressed hope of deploying South Korea's cutting-edge weapons, saying they would help strengthen Iraq's national defense. The minister also met officials from the Korea aerospace industries, reportedly to discuss the potential purchase of Korea's utility helicopter, Suryeon. KAI supplied 24 F-A-50 light attack aircraft Iraq in 2013, but is yet to sign any export deals for Suryeon. Now moving on. With Korea's 22nd general election just 20 days away, candidate registration will begin tomorrow, essentially marking the start of the election race. Our National Assembly correspondent Shin Ha-young has the details.
Starting Thursday, candidate registration for South Korea's general election will take place over 2 days from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Personal details including asset declarations, military service status, and criminal records of registered candidates will be publicly available through the National Election Commission's website. Both the ruling and main opposition parties last week each announced their 10 key pledges for the next 4 years with a shared emphasis on tackling the country's low birth rate. The People Power Party outlined its key pledges, focusing on 3 primary agendas: addressing the low birth rate, narrowing the widening wealth gap, and addressing climate change. The Democratic Party's commitments are centered around 4 major objectives: enhancing people's livelihoods, providing hope for the future, protecting democracy, and fostering peace. The party's focus lies in extending financial assistance to newlywed couples, such as providing public rental housing to couples with more than 1 child. Cities with major chipmakers plants, including SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics in Gyeonggi-do Province, known as the Semiconductor Belt, are emerging as pivotal swing regions. Parties have been announcing chip-related pledges and nominating influential candidates in these areas. The ruling party pledged full support for the government's plan to create a mega chip cluster in Gyeonggi-do Province by 2047 and simplify the process for chip development and investment permits.
The Semiconductor Belt is essentially a creation of the People Power Party. We are the ruling party, and President Yoon has made a lot of diplomatic efforts regarding semiconductor issues.
Meanwhile, the main opposition party has committed to creating an ecosystem for a semiconductor powerhouse through regulatory reforms and tax incentives. These include extending the tax deduction deadline for investments in national strategic technologies and establishing so-called semiconductor megacities in the southern and eastern regions of Gyeonggi-do Province.
The semiconductor industry is the key engine for South Korea's economy. With the increasing significance of chips, competition is escalating, transforming into a national-level competition.
After the 2-day registration period, candidates can run their official election campaign from next Thursday until April 9, the day before the general election. 신하영, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to reaffirm his commitment to allies, including his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, as part of his diplomatic priorities, having secured a fifth term in office. A summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un is also believed to be in the cards. Our Moon Hae-ryun covers these prospects.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to China for talks with Xi Jinping in May. According to a Reuters report on Tuesday, this could be the first overseas trip of his new presidential term after being re-elected on Sunday. The Kremlin declined to comment, but with Russia strengthening its ties with China since its invasion of Ukraine, it's unsurprising that Putin has made Beijing his first stop. Xi also visited Russia for his first overseas trip following the start of his third consecutive term in March last year, with the reciprocated gesture set to come after Putin's formal inauguration around May 7th. Putin reaffirmed Moscow's close ties with Beijing on Sunday, stating he would continue to develop their relationship in the coming years. The two leaders have met over 40 times, with the most recent meeting in October, when Putin was the guest of honor at China's Belt and Road Summit in Beijing. Trade and military ties between China and Russia have been particularly strong in recent years, with Chinese customs data showing that trade between the two sides hit over $218 billion between January and November last year. The Chinese Foreign Vice Minister also confirmed the strength of bilateral ties by claiming them to be the best in history during a visit to Moscow last month. Attention is also on whether Putin will be visiting North Korea, with observers predicting that such a trip could come in the second half of the year. Following the North Korea-Russia summit in September last year, Pyongyang's foreign minister visited Moscow in January to discuss another potential visit. A Kremlin spokesperson said that Putin's schedule for a visit to North Korea is being coordinated through diplomatic channels, but there were no plans to visit before and immediately after the presidential election. Analysts suspect that Putin is treading carefully amid reports of an arms trade between the two sides that violate UN Security Council resolutions. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In other news, 8 people have been pronounced dead after a South Korean chemical tanker carrying 11 crew members sank on Wednesday near an island located southwest of Japan. They were among the 9 crew who had been retrieved and airlifted hospital, while 2 remain missing. The crew was made up of 2 South Koreans, a Chinese national, and 8 Indonesians, but no details as to the nationalities of the rescued crew members have been made public. The Japanese Coast Guard said it received a call from the chemical tanker at about 7 a.m. on Wednesday, saying that the ship was tilting due to rough weather before it later completely capsized. An official from South Korea's foreign ministry said it has dispatched a consular official to the region and that the ministry is closely communicating with related authorities. Shifting gears. Tonight, the 2024 Major League Baseball is playing its first regular season game in Seoul for the first time. With Shohei Ohtani's debut, the Los Angeles Dodgers are taking on the San Diego Padres. Choi Soo-young reports.
This year, the MLB's list of hosts for its World Tour Series included South Korea for the first time. And a venue in Seoul was selected for the opening games. The Los Angeles Dodgers take on the San Diego Padres in the capital's Gocheok Skydome on Wednesday and Thursday. Both teams are very familiar with South Korean baseball fans due to Park Chan-ho, the legendary baseball player who in 1994 became the first South Korean ever to play in the MLB.
Park was invited to throw out the ceremonial first pitch in Wednesday's game because of his remarkable connection with both the Dodgers and the Padres.
Park excelled with the Dodgers for 9 years, winning 84 games, and then also played 2 years with the Padres, where he currently works as a special advisor. His successful career enabled many Korean players, including Ryu Hyun-jin and Chu Shin-soo, to join the MLB. Kim Ha-sung, who has given excellent performances with the Padres since 2021, is a key player to watch. He delighted Korean fans with 2 home runs during Monday's exhibition game against the LG Twins. In Wednesday's match, the Dodgers' Shohei Ohtani starts the game as a designated hitter, while the Padres' Kim is expected to start as a shortstop, setting the stage for a showdown between the players from Japan and South Korea. Tickets for Wednesday's match sold out in just 15 minutes. Thousands of people have gathered at the arena with big expectations.
We have some of the biggest names in baseball right now, so I'm looking for a really good game tonight.
Shohei Ohtani was a big name in California, Los Angeles, the LA Dodgers. Obviously, we didn't get him in the beginning, but now that we have him, our expectation is World Series.
Oh, they'll win. This is a big rivalry. The Padres beat the Dodgers in the playoffs a few years ago, and we've got momentum, and we got these 2 games.
After the Seoul Series, the MLB tour will move on to Mexico City in April and London in June. Gaeseong, Arirang News.
Today's Chunbun, the 4th season of spring on the lunar calendar. However, the cold winds have been blowing hard even in the middle of the day. The weather has been chilly all day long with this last cold snap, so there are some places where the snow or rain from yesterday has melted. This last cold snap will continue until tomorrow. The temperature in Seoul tomorrow morning will be 0 degrees, feeling colder than today. These chilly conditions will ease from Friday and temperatures will rise sharply. A dry weather warning was issued in Seoul for the 4th time this spring. Today, gusty winds of about 25 meters per second have been blowing around the coast, and strong winds also have been in place in other inland areas. As there is a high risk of wildfires, please take extra precautions. Tomorrow morning will be cold in most areas. Seoul, Gwangju, and Daegu 0 degrees, Gyeongju and Daejeon -1 degree. However, at least 11 degrees will be seen all over the country throughout the day. The temperatures will continue to rise until Sunday. However, another round of rain is expected across the country between Friday and Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Well, that is all for this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back in just a few minutes with our special live coverage of the 3rd Summit for Democracy being hosted by South Korea. Bye for now.
Welcome.